We're back with Quad City International Airport Executive Director Ben Leischner. We know nothing big can happen overnight at the airport, but everyone wants to see it thrive, of course. What priorities do you have that can help it grow?
Well, my first priority, honestly, is I don't want to get ahead of myself. I want to dedicate a certain amount of time, probably around 6 months, to just listening, learning, kind of identifying different things that are broken, because there are certain things that can be improved upon. But I really want to take the time. I'm a fixer. I'm going to want to fix those right away. But I really want to take the time to understand why things are broken and how I can go about fixing them with the right sustainable fix. So it's really about a level of community engagement, which I've already started meeting kind of business leaders within the community that we can work together as we further the interests of the airport and the region.
So you're hearing ideas and their ideas and what they'd like to see and trying to fulfill those needs as well.
Absolutely.
What is more important, I guess, in your opinion? Is it more flights, more airlines, more direct destinations? And I guess what's more realistic in all of that? Is it all of the above, and what's realistic?
Well, really before we even get to adding, I really want to work on the foundation of what we have today. And I look at, I got my business cards when I first got to the airport. They were nice enough to have those ready my day one as I got there. And right across the top of the business card, we have this tagline that says easier. And I think for our market and for our airport, I want to ensure that we really are the easier solution. And I think we have some work to get there. Trying to partner with TSA and long wait times have been a major concern. We have morning flights that are grouped very closely in the morning, and I don't feel like it's the right level of service to say you have to be there 2 hours earlier or you run the risk of missing your flight. I think for our type of airport, it should have some benefits where you can get through security reliably and quickly and have a higher level of service. Otherwise, we don't have an advantage over some of the other markets that are out there. So that's really what some of the things I want to focus on is creating the best service possible for our community.
Well, I've never had a problem getting through that airport. So when you hear about long wait times at that airport, I'm amazed to hear. Now, but we have seen the trend work, I guess, the other way in recent years with fewer flights, airlines, and destinations. Is that obviously beyond the immediacy that you're talking about, trying to take a bigger, longer view? Is that something you want to help the airport get there, and how do you guide that process?
Well, it's a bit of a building block process where we have to make sure that things are sustainable today. Before we start looking at new air service or modifying existing air service, we have to make sure that the airlines have what they need to be successful with existing markets. And when I started to do some research on the Quad City area, we have really strong air service as it is today. There's many communities across the United States that would be very envious of what we have. That's not to say that it can't get much better. In fact, my goal is to make it much better. But working with airlines that are here today to make sure that their needs are met and they're strong, and we're not looking at cancellations of the system where we've been encountering some issues with Allegiant Airlines and fleet deliveries where they've had cancellations and it's created an inconvenience for passengers. We want to make sure that what we have today is strong, and then we start to move forward very methodically. Are
you finding that there are some issues with the airports and the services they're getting? Are they happy?
Our airport today is I think there's room for improvement. I have been getting some feedback from different leaders throughout the community that they'd like to see some better connection times. They'd like to see some new markets. So I think there's opportunity there. And again, my first mission is to kind of get as much feedback as I can. These are very multifaceted issues, so I want to look at it from each vantage point of the different community leaders, as well as just citizens throughout the community of what we can do to improve. And then we'll build a plan to move forward as an airport where we can have some ownership that nobody would have the position of saying, I don't feel like I was heard in how we're moving forward.
You talked about new markets just a second ago. What, I guess, markets are being explored, and what kind of likelihood are they to happen?
Well, so I'm just starting to get into some of this stuff.
Sure.
And we have some very skilled consulting personnel on staff here that work also with the Quad City Chamber and I guess it's the Air Service Development Team, which is a collaboration of different entities within the region.
I mean, I've read North Carolina as a possibility.
North Carolina is a great one that seems to have a lot of synergy with companies like John Deere, where there's connections, and some of those where the airlines are very smart. I've worked a lot with different network folks at the airlines, and they are numbers driven. They can look at a lot of different markets across the United States, and they can see where the passengers are going and where they want to go. What they don't always see is some of the business interests of different businesses in a community. And so that's kind of the area we want to highlight, is say, hey, there's a lot of this market going to this other market. and start to generate some interest there.
Now, we know a couple of years ago United Airlines added that direct service to Washington, D.C. The community raised a couple of $1 million that was supposed to guarantee that service for 2 years. It lasted about 6 months. How much do airlines require subsidies to add service? Is that a winning business model for the airport?
You know, it's two different ways you can look at it. Subsidies in of themselves are typically not going to be a sustainable approach. But what it does do is the first 4 to 6 months of an operation on a new market for an airline is critical. And so allowing some kind of guarantee or subsidy allows them to test that market and see if it's going to be able to generate any kind of revenue and be sustainable. So it is.
It's a reality of the business today.
Yeah, it has to be a very careful calculation.
And but they can fail very easily too, right?
They can.
Why do you think this airport has been able to attract more lower-cost airlines like Southwest or JetBlue, for example? We had AirTran that left. We certainly have Allegiant. Is there a desire to get more service like that?
I absolutely have a desire to look at low-cost carriers just because of what they can bring to the market. Typically, they'll stimulate travel and activity that otherwise wouldn't be traveling. If you could get a cheap fare going someplace nice and have a reliable service there, why wouldn't you try it out? At the same time, when you get more of that type of ridership of leisure markets, it helps offset the cost to get more sustainable business traffic as well, where cost per enplanement is a big consideration. And if your enplanement number goes down, the airline cost per enplanement goes up.
So you have to find that balance. Is that something that you think is a workable possibility here?
Absolutely. And so one thing that we can directly control is cost. And so as the airport, we're just getting ready to start we just had approval of our next year's budget. We're starting to take a hard look at where we can build some efficiency, and we're going to partner with the airlines on what we can do to provide better service for them at a reduced cost.
You talked about the slogan, easier. Why do you think it's a tough sell to passengers? Because it is easier to fly out of Moline.
Yeah, it is easier.
Is it strictly a money thing?
Money is a factor, and that's where, especially if you're a family of 4, a small incremental increase of just a few dollars can add up pretty quick. We have launched a Fly Local campaign where we have a tool on our website that you can look at different considerations of the value of your time or the value of
gas and parking.
Gas and parking and everything else. So it does give you a clear picture of what that difference is. A lot of people just get fixated on, oh, I save $15 on a fare. They don't think about the $15 or $20 difference a day in parking costs that they'll start to incur once they get to a different airport.
Now, there was the Fly MLI marketing campaign a couple of years ago. I think it takes more than a slogan to accomplish that sort of thing. What do you think it will take to convince people around the Quad Cities to use it more? You've got the calculator, you say, on there, but that hasn't done it yet, obviously.
Yeah. It has to be a comprehensive approach, and so having a tagline is great. It can get people's attention, but we really have to be able to walk the walk, and starting with that would be to, again, make the airport the easiest option available, having it be reliable. I've talked to several people in the community where they say they would love to be able to fly out of Moline or Quad City Airport, but when they have 2 weeks of vacation per year, and last year they got burned because they missed their connection due to a delay, obviously we can't control delays for the airlines, but we can do everything we can to ensure their success. So we want to make sure that we get people to where they need to go on time and they don't miss out on days of their vacation.
Now, when I lived in a different part of the state a few years ago, I occasionally drove more than an hour out of my way to fly out of Bloomington, and the big attraction there is free parking. Mm-hmm. What are the chances something like that can be applied here? Is that a workable solution? That could be something else that you have in your arsenal. You
know, I'm looking at all the tools available to us today. I'm also looking at how we can expand the toolbox to increase ridership. Parking is, people have probably heard it, it's one of those large revenue generators for an airport.
Right.
Again, when we're looking at cost, that's probably one of the first things I don't want to start cutting down on would be any kind of user fees. One thing that's kind of new to me is having a tax base as the airport. My goal is to, you know, as any hopefully good airport director or manager's goal would be, is to be self-sustainable. I would love to have user fees be enough to cover what the cost of the airport is and not have to rely on the community. That's just not the case where we are today.
We're going to get to more of that in a second because we're not quite done with Ben Leishner. Money does make the world go round, and that is same goes for airports to be sure. What different revenue generating strategies can be utilized as we cover this further for the record?